This series of author interviews is brought to you by Leisure Press and the Book Reality Experience, turning writers' dreams into book realities.
Hi everybody, and welcome to this latest episode when we're going to be talking to author Kerriann Speers, who has contributed to two anthologies that Leisure Press and Book Reality have brought out. So thanks very much for joining us, Kerriann. Thanks for taking the time. So for anybody that doesn't know you, who are you, who's Kerriann, and where do you call home, and where are you talking to us from today?
Okay, I'm Kerriann Speers. I'm in Kerriann at the moment, in Northern Ireland. I've got like a bit of a weird background. I lived in London until I was 12, and then we moved over to Northern Ireland and lived in Portrush along the north coast of Northern Ireland. And so I've officially been here, I think, now 26 years. So I've been here longer than I've been in London, yeah, so I sort of think of London as home, but it's when I'm in London I think of here as home, so it's one of those things.
My wife and I can both relate to that. She was born in London but has grown up in Australia. And obviously I grew up in Northern Ireland, but have lived in England and London, and specifically in Stanmore in London. Whereabouts in London were you originally from?
North London, Hackney.
Right.
I lived on an estate in London with my whole family came over just before the Troubles, actually, in the 60s. They came over to England for work, and so they stayed there for 30-40 years, and then they decided just to pack up and go back again.
So you're on the Northumberland coast in a place called Coleraine, which I know well, but for people that don't know Northern Ireland, Portrush was the place where everybody migrated to for their summer holidays. It was the place where it had all the amusements and the great beaches. Did you have all of that experience when you were growing up? Was that what you knew?
Yeah, well, when we moved over, it couldn't have been more of a change to go from a city to this. Well, we moved over at the very end of August, so I had holidays in Portrush as a child, but we got like a little slice of the summer season in Portrush, and then it went into Portrush in the winter, which is like you don't see anybody. You could walk up and down the road and not see anybody for 30 minutes. So it was a completely different, it was like quiet, completely sort of, I don't know, I wouldn't say desolate place, but it was just a completely grim place compared to during the summer. And the weather as well, once it gets to September, it's like gales and just the wind whipping off the sea. But it was very atmospheric, and it was a beautiful place to really settle down. And I ended up working as a teenager in Barry's, which is the place to be.
The big amusement arcade.
Yes, the big amusement arcade. So it was the place to be during the summer. So I was in there selling balloons and selling ice cream. So it was good fun.
So with that move from London to Northern Ireland and the seaside town in the summer and the more desolate place in the winter, did that all form you to write when you were young? Or did you just get into writing later? How did that come about?
I don't really know when I started writing, to be honest, because I have always been telling stories. So when I think I was 5, I asked for a typewriter for my birthday so I could write my stories on. So I've always written, but Portrush, when I lived in Portrush and I was a teenager, I was always writing poems, poem after poem, and it was all very, it was all very like a Wuthering Heights. It's all very dramatic and
bits of Teeny and angst thrown in there.
Yeah, a lot of feelings in there. But Portrush definitely helped with that. I don't think there was any point I can point at and say that's when I decided I wanted to be a writer. It was just something that always happened.
But you've been very successful with short stories and poetry that you've sent into festivals and competitions. So, I mean, I think I've lost count of the number that you've actually been recognised for, but you were recognised in the Bangor Literary Festival in Dublin and various others.
Yeah.
But no, was that for prose or for poetry?
With the Dublin, I think it was the Red Line Festival, it was a short story. It was a short story called The Infinite Universes of Maggie Lavery and Lavery. I always say that wrong. And with Bangor, it was a flash fiction piece. But I do write poems, but I am not keen on my own poems. It's like my own poems are like, when you can hear yourself sing and you think, oh, that sounds a bit off. That's what it sounds like to me when I read my poems. But with short stories, I just love them. I can, because I know both of them, a lot of work goes into them. But with short stories, I feel like there's this more of a scope to explain what you mean. Whereas with a poem, you're doing it with one line and it can either hit or miss. And for me, it always sounds like it misses.
See, that's interesting, because if I go to North Star, which was the anthology we did of women from Northern Ireland or based in and around Northern Ireland. So your part of that was at your grandmother's table. But I would say that this was a poem. Now, it's quite prosy in places, but it's definitely, to my ear, when I read it out loud, when it was originally the submission that we got, it definitely reads more like a poem than a short story prose piece. And it's beautiful. So it's set with a woman going to visit her grandmother, yeah? And so where did this come from? Was it from personal experience?
Yes. That my grandmother actually read that poem and she said, yes, that's just me. So that's exactly, I sat down to write a poem, and I had a lot of trouble because there was, normally if I write a poem, I'm just writing a poem, words come, I write it down, maybe leave it and come back to it. But there was a call out from Women Aloud to see if anybody wanted to write. And so I sat down thinking, I'm going to write a poem, and that my mind went blank almost straight away. It was like just nothing there. And then I just was thinking about my grandmother, because during COVID, this was written all during the first lockdown in the UK, and I was ringing her every day, and there wasn't a great deal for us to talk about except for the news. So, and she is a very big news watcher. So I was getting the news for the day every time I rang. And so as I was calling her, I was imagining her in her kitchen. So I was trying to sort of conjure up the image of her standing in her kitchen talking to me. And that's when the poem sort of started, because it was just this sort of back and forth that we usually had at the kitchen table. We would sit there and we would talk about things, and she'd be like, and she'd always make sure to wear something that I had bought her. She would always be like, this is the skirt you bought me, or this is, and so I mentioned in it that's the blue cardigan that you got me. Do you remember that time? So that's where it sort of came from. And a lot of my writing does come from my grandparents and my great aunts and that kind of thing, because they were, or they still are, great storytellers. And that, when I'm trying to sit down to write a story or a poem, a lot of the time it comes to me as though somebody's talking to me, in the same way my granny would tell me a story. She would go, wait till you hear this, and then she would launch into something. Or one of my great aunts would say, come here till I tell you this, and then say something. And that's the way my stories sort of start. It's somebody just going, come here till I tell you this, and then it's just sort of starts. So
they had a great tradition. I mean, your grandparents probably slightly younger than mine would have been, but the same sort of generation where they were all naturally gifted storytellers. They would sit around in the evenings in living rooms filled more with cigarette smoke than with oxygen. But they would tell stories, and they would be able to recite poetry from Tennyson to silly poems, to rhymes. But they'd learnt them by rote when they were children. So storytelling came. There was a line in here, by the way, in this particular poem, which I thought was superb, which is, and she will tell you about a relative you don't remember meeting, because the amount of times that I was sat down by my parents or grandparents, oh, you'll remember Shuey. No, I've got no recollection of it. Oh, but he's your aunt's second cousin's fifth cousin removed. And it's like, well, that's nice. I'm sure you remember him. No, I honestly don't. And it wouldn't stop them. They'd still fly into the story and tell them all about it. And
that is the same. The last time I had a conversation with my great aunts, they were telling me about somebody, and they were like, oh, my cousin that lives over the mountain. And I was like, what mountain? What are you talking about? And then it turned out they were from Mayo or something. It was like so far away, but it was just up the road.
Not exactly over the next mountain down the road, half a country away. And in the second anthology that we brought out, The Forgiveness is the Hardest Thing. Now, this wasn't just Northern Irish writers. This was women from across the world that we'd gone out to. And it was actually inspired by one particular woman writer who had said that she thought an anthology about particularly stories or poems about the forgiveness that was required or not required by society. And your story in here, The Nothing Box. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and what it's about and where it came from or how it was inspired?
Yeah. So when the call, I think it was you or maybe Jasmine sent out a call for stories or essays, and I thought about it for a while, and I had been mulling over this story for a little while, and it was about a woman who is dealing with anxiety and depression after many years after a sexual assault. And it's her trying to care for her child, trying to sort of live her life, but at the same time, she just keeps getting reminded of this sexual assault. And she goes to a counsellor to discuss it openly. And somehow, just from one line of something that the counsellor says, then it feels as though that maybe the help that she's been looking for just hasn't really found it. But I had been sort of mulling that story over for quite a while, because I'm not the kind of person who takes on people's negativity. There's a lot of people, especially around Northern Ireland, who give you sort of a backhanded compliment, and I would be the kind of person who laughs the second something like that happens. But I know a lot of people who take on that sort of negativity, and then it just, it's just a continual negative thought pattern. Why did they say this? So I was thinking about that a lot, and then the call came out, and I thought, well, I'll maybe give this story a go. And it was probably the hardest thing I've ever written. It took me quite a long time to get it onto the page, because usually if I've got a short story, the first draft, I can maybe in a couple of weeks get it completely onto the page and then start editing it. But with this one, I had such trouble, especially I had a lot of trouble with deciding whether it would be in first person or third person. And then eventually I went for second person you, because that just seemed to just open up the story rather than everything else sort of put a barrier in the way. When I went first person, it felt like the person was very negative and closed off, and third person just didn't work at all. And then I went second person, and then this character just opened up completely, and it was a lot easier. Then the words just went on the page really easily.
It's really interesting because obviously within anthologies with so many different voices, the editing can be quite a task, really, because you can't over edit so that you take away the voice of the various writers that are coming in. But this, when we received your submission, there was practically nothing to be edited at all. It had obviously flowed from you, although you said that you'd had decisions to make about the people, or the point of view rather. Once you finally decided on that, it must have been written quite quickly or quite seamlessly, because there was very little that was needing to be adjusted at all.
Yeah, I think sometimes when I'm having trouble with a story, I just keep going from different angles. I change the tense, I change the person, and whenever you just sort of get that point where things start to work, then it's just really easy to get those words. But I did edit it a lot, a lot, because I have a tendency to write things 3 times. So, if I was writing something, I'd be like, well, he was tall and big, and it would just continue. It would continue on until I found the right word. So I'm like predictive text. It just keeps coming up.
Going until it gets there.
Yeah.
The one thing that I thought was remarkable about the story was, so it deals with this woman going to counselling and how she's coping or not coping on occasion. But then the final scene is her taking her daughter picking her daughter up from school, rather. And she looks across the schoolyard and sees the man that has been responsible for her suffering all of this angst and trauma. And the way that it was dealt with, because there isn't a word spoken between them, but the way that you've written it and how he reacts, it was really powerful. So how did you come up with that ending?
It was just, I think everybody's been in a situation where we're walking along, and you see somebody that and you just maybe don't have the time. You don't have the time for them, and you can see on their face. And there was a work colleague of mine, and I bumped into him, and it was the first time I'd seen him in 5 years. And we had a conversation, and we were like, hey, well, wow, you're still at the company. And and then I bumped into him the next week, and I was like, oh, hey. And then I bumped into him the next week, and as he was walking towards me, I could see on his face, he was thinking, oh no, not not this person again. Like, we hadn't seen each other for 5 years. The first time, that was fine. The second time, a bit to talk about. The third time, no. So that sort of played on my mind, that idea that you see somebody, and the moment you look at them, you can see on their face that they're not happy to see you. And that sort of was on my mind, that could go into a story. And so it became a bit more of a serious thing than it was the initial idea, but that's the way it goes sometimes.
It really worked well. It really did. I know Mickey Flanagan, the London comedian, who actually comes from where you originally hailed from, up Hackney Way, and he said about There was you couldn't go back out if you'd already said hello to your neighbour twice in one morning, because there was nothing to say to them the third time round. But same sort of thing. But yours took it a lot more serious.
Yeah.
As an ending to a story, I thought it was very, very powerful. So with those anthologies, you've obviously been writing for quite a long time, and you're building towards your first complete set of short stories coming up.
Yes, it was planned for last November, and then it got pushed to March, and now it's getting pushed to later this year. I'm hoping October, but I'm having a problem with one story, and it has really, I really don't want to abandon it, but it's really had a lot of work to it's really taken a lot of work to get it finished. But the first story in the anthology is going to be the one I mentioned earlier, the Infinite Universes of Maggie Lavery. See, I can't say that name. I should have changed it. I knew it at the time, but Maggie Lavery, and then which has a slightly magic realism element to it. Well, I say slightly, I would say quite a large part of it, and it's a story about a woman who has always had the ability since she was a child to split herself in two. So in any decision that she makes where there's sort of a yes, no, one way or the other answer, she just splits herself in two, and another universe is created where she takes the other path.
Wow.
And we're with the woman who has taken the safest path. She's always said no to the opportunities that scare her, and she's just at this point in her life where she really hasn't taken any risks. And then she is in the hospital getting checked for breast cancer, and she's just thinking about her life and all these paths that she could have taken. So that's the first story in the anthology, and it sort of sets you up for the rest of the anthology, because quite a lot of them have a slightly magical element to it, but the majority of them are just sort of based around the North Coast. There's quite a few that are based in around Portrush and Port Stewart sort of area, and Port Ballantrae, which is all sort of along that North Coast, Glens of Antrim kind of tour that you can do. So yeah, I'm excited to get them finished. That's where I'm at the moment. But the most recent one has taken quite a long detour. It started at about 3,000 words, and it's now up to 9,000 words, which is quite a lot.
That's good.
So it's going to have to be it's going to have to be pared back quite a bit. So
does the anthology have a title yet, or have you not settled on that?
I think I'm going to go with the Infinite Universes of Maggie Lavery. Yeah. So I think I'm going to go with that and other stories. But it is pretty much done. It's at 95%. It's all the rest of the stories have been edited and they're already formatted. It's just this one last story just needs.
And is it being, who's publishing this one for you?
I'm going to be publishing it independently. I had thought about sending it out to a few people, but I didn't really want to go down that route. I wanted to be sort of in control of things. I'm quite anxious about handing things over. So
I mean, as you know, Book Reality Experience, we're advocates for independent publishing.
Yeah.
We couldn't be more happy that more and more authors independently publish and take the reins themselves, because it gives you a lot more control about the creative side of things, but it, down from cover design to the interior format to everything that you can control. Plus, it's also fairer because you get a much better say of the royalties. So that's a much better outcome.
Yeah, I also, a lot of publishing houses at the moment, I don't really know who I would send work out to, because it seems as though everything's like a machine just churning out books, and they don't really seem to care whether it's somebody who's controversial. They're like somebody who maybe doesn't have the best scribbles or morals, and so I wouldn't want to feel like if I was published by a publisher who comes along and picks somebody who doesn't, who has opposing ideas to mine, you know, I wouldn't feel like I could back that publisher then.
So wouldn't sit comfortably if they were publishing people who had a moral undertone that you didn't agree with, or it didn't sit comfortably?
Yeah, everything's very polarized at the moment. You know, people have strong feelings one way or another politically. And if somebody was published that was the opposite to me, I wouldn't feel very confident in the publisher anymore. So I think the only person I know that definitely has the same morals as me is me. So
well, that's as good a reason to go independent, and added to all the other reasons for control, for making sure that your copyright is yours, that your creative input is valued for everything that it should be. So it's an excellent decision. I think it's good. As we would advise all writers, though, if you do decide to get assistance with any of the aspects of it, make sure the company that you've gone to, you've researched them, you've gone into detail, because unfortunately, there are certain companies out in the independent space of assistance and assisting authors that are far from scrupulous. So.
Yeah, I know. I've been contacted by a few places, and I think, well, if they're contacting me, then they're they're probably not probably not the best people, because I've noticed a few. I'm on a lot of Facebook forum things, and I notice a lot of people. There's a certain publishing house that contacts a lot of people and says, we will publish your book, just pay us £1,000 or something. And it's like, well, maybe have a good look into those people before you say yes.
We won't mention their names, but there are a number of companies out there, and the biggest red flag of all, in fact, one of our other authors in one of the other interviews that we've done has said the same, that the biggest red flag of all is no publishing house, no assistance service, no agent will cold call you. That's not how it works. And if you are getting cold called, then that's when you want to run away quickly. Listen, thank you ever so much for your time this afternoon. Or is it still been just this afternoon with you?
It's now? Just this afternoon.
What we're going to do is, if you're willing, I've got 15 quick fire questions to throw your way. It's kind of like the Actors Studio questionnaire, but it's the Book Reality Author Studio questionnaire. So if you're up for these, okay?
Yeah, sure.
What's your favorite book?
Oh, I'm gonna say Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier.
Okay. What's your least favorite book?
Can I pass on that one, because I don't know if I can genuinely say that.
Okay, I'll let you away with it, and then I'll ask you off camera, and then I'll figure out whether we slot it back in later. What turns you on?
Do you know what? I wouldn't have said this about 2 years ago, but editing. I'm really enjoying editing at the moment.
You are a strange person. I know quite a lot of authors are now going to be looking at you thinking, and she seems such a nice person right up until that.
Yeah, I know. They'll be deleting me off their phone.
What turns you off?
Anything that is generally sort of stereotypical, that isn't very well researched. It's just, it's just a stereotype. They've not gone for a second layer. They've not really done any research.
Just writing in tropes, that type of thing.
Yeah,
yeah. The tall, dark, and handsome vampire all that type of stuff.
Yeah, exactly it.
I think I'm going to guess this one, but summer or winter?
Oh, no, do you know what? Winter. I do actually really enjoy winter. I'm not a great person during the summer. I get headaches and hives and nose bleeding and everything. I'm terrible.
And you've got Northern Irish complexion now, so go out.
That's exactly it. That's what it is.
Yeah, it takes us 2 months to go from blue to white. On a completely free day to do anything you want, who do you spend it with?
My kids. They're downstairs now, being very quiet for me. But the both of them are as much storytellers as I am. In fact, they're better. They come up with better lines, just straight off, and I don't even know how they do it.
Nice work. Mountains or oceans?
Oceans, absolutely.
What's your favorite movie?
Oh, do you know what? I'm going to be honest. It's Wayne's World 2. I could lie and say The Godfather or something like that, but it's Wayne's World 2. I watch it every time.
Excellent. One song that you get to listen to for the rest of your life, and only one song or piece of music?
I tend to listen to a lot of Florence and the Machine, but I don't think I could listen to that forever. So I'm gonna be topical and say Kate Bush, but Babushka.
Oh, okay.
Because that's great for kicking your legs up. Good work. And enjoying it.
Who makes you laugh the most?
My husband does. We've been together 20 years and he still makes me laugh every day.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Nice work. Is he from Northern Ireland originally?
He is from Bushmills. So
home of the best whiskey in the world.
Yes.
What smell do you love?
Smell. Ooh. Do you know, I am a big fan of perfume. I wear perfume every day, but I couldn't even tell you what smells they are, to be honest. I've got quite bad sinuses, so I hardly ever can smell anything.
So then the next one's going to be an interesting question. What smell do you hate?
Oh no, I know that. Cinnamon. I mean, in general, I don't like cinnamon. Okay. I'm good when it's at Christmas, but
other than that, no.
No.
Other than being a writer, what profession would you like to attempt?
Human rights lawyer, which was what I wanted to be from about the age of 5.
Oh wow!
So I really
a human rights lawyer. Very good.
Yeah, I wanted to be one right up until I was 18, 19, and we were picking universities, and then I realized after doing work experience that you don't get a lot of time to sit about and write, so I chose writing instead.
And what profession would you definitely not like to do?
Well, I've worked in a petrol station and I would never go back there ever again. Even if somebody said you were get paid £1 million, no, not a chance.
Okay. No. And if God exists, or if heaven exists rather, what would you like God to say to you when you arrive there?
Well, I would hope he would say, "You're on time for once," because I never am. I never am. So
you're going to be late for, stereotypically, you're going to be late for your own funeral.
I would say. The only thing I was ever early for was my wedding. I think I got there 20 minutes early, but somebody didn't turn up and they had to hold off the wedding for quite a while until they were seated. So
oh, good work. Hey, listen, Kerriann, thanks ever so much for your time today. That's really good.
Thank you.
Good luck with the new book, and I expect you to be posting on Instagram and Facebook and let us all know when it comes out. And I, for one, will be definitely looking forward to read about Miss Lavery.
Thank you.
No worries. You take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more readings and author interviews. And don't forget to hit that bell to get notified every time we post new content.